Would it surprise you if I told you that these tiny grains played a role in one of the darkest chapters of Indian history? Or that they contain a biochemical defense system that makes them incredibly resilient? Or that they might be one of our best weapons against climate change? Before we dive into the fascinating world of millets, let's first understand what they are. Millets are essentially grasses that produce small edible seeds. Think of them as distant cousins of wheat and rice, but with superpowers when it comes to surviving harsh conditions. There are several types of millets: ragi or finger millet, bajra or pearl millet, jowar or sorghum, and many others. For instance, jowar, sorghum, is the sixth most widely grown crop in the world after rice, wheat, sugarcane, corn, and potato. But what makes millet special isn't just their variety, it's their incredible ability to survive. You see, millets evolved in Africa during a period when the climate was becoming increasingly dry. While other plants needed lots of water and fertile soil, millets developed some fascinating adaptations. One, they have a highly efficient C4 photosynthesis pathway. There are two kinds of photosynthesis, C3 and C4. Animals take in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants take in CO2 and breathe out oxygen. C3 and C4 pathways differ in a plant's ability to capture carbon dioxide and convert it into glucose and thus energy, especially under specific environmental conditions. C3 is the most common photosynthesis pathway used by crops like rice, wheat, and barley. It operates efficiently in wet climates with high levels of carbon dioxide. However, C3 plants suffer from a process called photorespiration in hot and dry conditions where oxygen competes with carbon dioxide, reducing the efficiency of photosynthesis. C4 photosynthesis is used by millets like pearl millet, bajra, and sorghum, jowar, and has evolved to minimize photorespiration. It incorporates a specialized mechanism to concentrate carbon dioxide in cells, allowing photosynthesis to continue efficiently even in hot, arid climates. In simple terms, C3 is like an old ambassador. C4 is like an ambassador with a hybrid engine. Photosynthesis is generally slow, but C4 is more efficient. 2. Millet roots can grow deep and spread wide, allowing them to survive with minimal water. 3. They can complete their life cycle in as little as 60 days, in contrast to rice and wheat that take 4 to 6 months, perfect for regions with short rainy seasons. But here's where it gets really interesting. Millets have evolved 3 remarkable biochemical mechanisms that make them nutritional powerhouses. 1. Fiber. Imagine molecular sponges in your digestive system. That's millet fiber for you. But different millets have evolved different types of fiber structures. Sorghum and finger millets fiber forms a gel-like matrix that physically slows down food transit in your gut. This isn't just about feeling full longer. This slower transit time has been linked to reduce risk of inflammatory bowel disease. 2. Cholesterol. Pearl millet, bajra, sorghum, jowar, and finger millet, ragi, have fiber molecules that can actually bind to bile acids and steroids in your digestive system. When these fiber molecules bind to bile acids, they prevent them from being reabsorbed into your bloodstream, forcing your body to use up cholesterol to make new bile acids, a natural cholesterol lowering mechanism. 3. Sugar. Unlike rice or wheat, which break down quickly, millet starches have a unique molecular structure that makes them digest more slowly. The starch granules exhibit what scientists call a polygonal rhombic shape that contain about 15 to 20% amylose and 80 to 85% amylopectin. This ratio is crucial because amylose digests more slowly than amylopectin, helping maintain steady blood sugar levels. 4. Proteins, which incidentally are produced by millets to help it resist drought. While rice or wheat just have one major protein fraction, millets contain albumins, globulins, prolamins, and glutelins. Again, overall better for you. But key thing to remember, millets are still grains and not protein sources. Your diet still needs to include rich sources of protein. Soy if you're vegan, dairy or eggs if you're vegetarian, and seafood or meat if you're regular. Beyond starches and protein, plants also produce secondary metabolites. These are compounds that are not essential for basic growth but help them survive stress. In millets, these include polyphenols that act as antioxidants and minerals that enhance cell wall strength. When we eat millets, we benefit from these compounds. It's like getting a chemical defense system in every bite. So now that I've hyped up millets like a proper salesman, it's important to give you a fuller context. So before you rush to go switch to 100% millets, let's look at some data. One of the problems with social media is that it has a tendency to create heroes and villains. Millets, for example, are hyped up as superfoods. This is a bit misleading. They are great foods, but in the context of our current diet and food system, which is very rice and wheat heavy, and those crops take a lot of water and fertilizers. But millets are also, at the end of the day, grains. So you have to look at them not in isolation, but in comparison to wheat and rice. And even then, every millet is unique. For example, when it comes to total amount of protein, millets are roughly in the same range as wheat and rice, even if the protein structure they have is slightly different from wheat and rice. When it comes to fiber, they're roughly in the same range as atta, but better than rice. When it comes to iron, bajra has almost double the amount of iron in comparison to wheat. When it comes to vitamins, all millets really shine when it comes to folates. Little millet really shines when it comes to biotin, and ragi is very rich in ergocalciferol. So in a sense, if you want to truly benefit from millets, eat all of them, not just one. But even if micronutrient and macronutrient-wise, they're roughly similar to other grains, a millet's adaptation to surviving harsh conditions translate into a few specific health benefits. One, weight management. Because of their water-absorbing and bulking properties, you naturally tend to consume fewer calories than when you eat rice or wheat in a meal. The fiber content creates a feeling of fullness much earlier. Two, cardiovascular health. The bile acid binding properties of pearl millet, bajra, sorghum, and finger millet don't just lower cholesterol. Studies have shown they reduce overall cardiovascular risk by affecting lipid metabolism. Three, diabetes management. The combination of slower carbohydrate absorption and improved glucose tolerance makes certain millets particularly beneficial for blood sugar control. Studies have shown that regular consumption can help reduce glycemic response. Now, let's talk about that dark chapter in history that I mentioned earlier. Before the British Raj, millets were actually more widely consumed in India than rice in many regions. Every region had its own millets, which explains the huge variety we have. But here's what happened. The British were spending a lot of gold and silver buying tea from China. At that time in the 18th century, China was the only source of tea. And the Chinese did not want to barter. They were like, I need hard cash, gold or silver. So the British came up with a diabolical plan to get the Chinese population addicted to opium. You see, some of the finest opium in the world grew in Bihar and Bengal. So this was the plan. Grow more opium here in India, smuggle it into China, because the emperor was not going to allow it to be imported legally. And as people got addicted to it, they'd pay hard cash for it. Cash that could then be used to buy tea. Yeah. Just one problem. Indian farmers prefer to grow useful things like millets because during bad monsoon years, millets were a lifesaver. So the British started paying large sums of money to convince farmers to switch to opium. Large tracts of land traditionally used for millet cultivation were converted to opium fields. This was not just an agricultural change. It was a catastrophic disruption of food security systems that had evolved here over thousands of years. You see, millets were perfectly adapted to India's monsoon-dependent agriculture. They could survive if the rains failed, providing food security during droughts. When this system was disrupted, it contributed to several devastating famines during the colonial period. To tide over these famines, the British encouraged people to consume more rice and wheat, crops they could source from other regions and provide as part of a ration system, the same system that is still in place. What is available in a ration shop is what the state buys from farmers at a minimum support price. Guess what has never been on that list? Millets. Imagine the impact on our long-term health if we did not switch wholesale to rice and wheat back in the day. Imagine its impact on our currently scary levels of diabetes. But let's switch from that dark and tragic history and let's get to the part where we learn from history but focus on the future. How do you incorporate millets into your diet? Because they are highly dense grains that evolved to survive droughts, they're not easy to cook. Let's start with whole millets. Some general tips. This is optional, but roasting millets over dry heat adds nutty flavors thanks to the Maillard reaction. It also deactivates phytic acid, which tends to interfere in nutrient absorption. After that, always rinse millets thoroughly to remove debris. Then soak for 30 minutes to 2 hours to reduce cooking time. Use a 1:2.5 millet to water ratio for fluffy grains. Use a higher ratio if you want a porridge or khichdi-like consistency. Use a higher temperature at the start of the cooking process to gelatinize starch, but then lower the temperature so that it does not turn mushy. You can also just use a pressure cooker. Don't believe in the social media scaremongering nonsense about pressure cookers. Pressure-cooked millets are actually easier to digest. 2. Now let's address rotis. Unlike wheat, millets do not contain gluten, which is essential for elasticity in dough. So this makes millet flours harder to make rotis with. We have all struggled with it. But here is a simple food science hack. Adding a small amount of xanthan gum, about 1 teaspoon per cup of flour, or psyllium husk, normally used for constipation, can improve binding and make millet rotis easier to make. Millet flours also tend to absorb more water. So allowing the dough to rest for 15 to 20 minutes after mixing helps hydrate the flour evenly, making it easier to work with. Sometimes many people don't like the taste of 100% millet flours, so for better texture and taste, combine millet flours with small amounts of other flours like rice, wheat, or tapioca flour. Your final roti will be much tastier. So what all can you make with millets? It's very simple. Anything you can make with rice or wheat, you can make with millets. And more importantly, you can still use wheat or rice. Just add millets additionally to make a healthier version of the dish. 1. Khichdi template, which includes pongal, bisi bele bath. Just replace rice with millets or half the rice with millets. 2. Bajra, pearl millet, has slightly higher fat content, making bajra flour excellent for rotis. Again, you can use half atta and half millet or millet plus xanthan gum. 3. You can also ferment millets. So idli and dosa batter can be made with millets in addition to urad dal. Added advantage, the bacteria break down phytic acid, making minerals more bioavailable. Fermentation also produces more B vitamins. And it also creates flavor compounds that make the final product more delicious. Now, let's talk about why millets might be crucial for our future. Climate change is making weather patterns more unpredictable, and water is becoming increasingly scarce. Consider these numbers. Rice needs about 2,500 liters of water per kilogram. Wheat needs about 1,500 liters. Millets, just 500 liters or less. But it's not just about water. Millets can grow in poor soil conditions, require minimal pesticides, have a lower carbon footprint, can survive in temperatures up to 46 Celsius. So what does all of this mean for you? Should you switch completely to millets? Well, like everything in nutrition, it's not that simple. A lot of people do not digest millets very well. The high amount of fiber and resistant starch can cause digestive discomfort in many people. So here's what I suggest. 1. Start by incorporating millets into your existing diet without making wholesale changes. Replace rice with ragi for breakfast, particularly in the form of idlis or dosas. Use bajra for rotis or a mix of bajra and atta for rotis. Try millet-based snacks. 2. Understand their cooking properties. Many millets cook faster than rice, although you will have to soak ahead of time. They're more filling because of higher fiber content. They have a lower glycemic index. 3. Experiment with different varieties of millets. Each type has its unique flavor, texture, and importantly, nutritional properties. So mix different millets in your diet. There is something fundamentally off about the idea of an incredibly diverse country like India, with the number of states and languages we have, to only eat rice or wheat as staples. And history tells us that the fact that we only eat rice and wheat is an aberration, one that we should fix. These tiny grains are not just nutritious, they are a testament to nature's incredible ability to adapt and survive, much like the people of India have over millennia, adapted and survived. Millets are a part of our agricultural heritage, and they might just be crucial for our future food security.
Explaining the science of food and debunking pseudoscience is hard work. So I request you to consider becoming a member of this channel. Members get to be part of a private group that will work together to dig into the science of food in far more detail and also discover the true joy of food.